This is Nick from BikeTalk, and Jason Henderson is a professor at San Francisco State University in geography. Jason.
Hey.
That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
So where does your field intersect with, bikes exactly?
It's a really good question. So geographers are interested in spatial interaction, in human environment interaction, and myself, I'm particularly interested in the geography of the city, and particularly the geography of our transportation. So how it's laid out, how it's organized, but also what geographers are very interested in, and there's a subfield within geography that, for lack of a better word, is called critical geography. And so where I come into this is looking at not just how urban space is organized, but who decides and why were those decisions made. And where that takes me is culture, politics, debates over allocation of street space, which is, I guess, that would be my entry point into thinking about bicycles, but also public transportation and automobiles and walking and whatnot. But the way streets are allocated, the way we decide the lanes, where there's parking, who has access to the streets, curb cuts that are the entrances to driveways and parking, because parking is a huge sub-issue, if you will, of the whole built environment that's often understudied. But so my research, which I've come out recently with a book called Street Fight, The Politics of Mobility in San Francisco, is basically looking at all of these debates about the street. So how transit is handled in the streets, and how bicycles are handled in the streets, and how automobiles have had this century of hegemonic dominance. And where this takes me, and I think a lot more people, is when you get into the political decision-making about street space, I have an interest in the ideological underpinnings of the political decision. So I'm interested in political ideology and street space. And I can just give you a quick sort of synopsis of, or a simplification. If we think about the automobile broadly and how it should fit into the city, there's multiple ideological and philosophical perspectives about that. But in our urban politics, there's really three dominant ideological perspectives. And this holds for, I think, San Francisco, some previous work that I did in the Atlanta area, Los Angeles, New York, wherever. And the first is that there's a progressive ideological viewpoint, which is that because of the deep social and environmental problems that come from the system of automobility, the government should interact, should regulate the street in such a way as to help privilege other modes of transportation, such as bicycling, because it's a greener mode, public transportation, because it's a greener mode, and there's also all kinds of social equity issues that go with that. So progressives generally support an active government that reallocates the street space away from this past century of car dominance. Now, there's also a neoliberal approach, which harkens back to the liberal economic theory of the 19th century. That is, less government, more of a market-based approach. And in its purest form, the neoliberal approach would suggest that the decisions about street space and about cities broadly should be determined through pricing and the market. So the neoliberal position here in San Francisco is actually leaning towards more biking and more public transportation, in as much as it is a commodification of urban space, because there's this demand, for example, of tech workers to have walkable communities and things like that. So there's this interesting political cross-fertilization happening between this neoliberal politics and some of these progressive ideas. And then at the other end of the spectrum is the conservative position about street space, which is similar to the progressive in that the government is active, but it's the government actively ensuring unfettered, inexpensive automobility. So, even people who profess to be socially liberal or progressive on certain issues, when it comes to their car, when it comes to driving, they exhibit very conservative values, that, cars should be inexpensive, that access to anywhere in the city should be easy and convenient and high speed. And it speaks to this whole, sort of individualist, responsibility, personal responsibility towards one family is to cocoon them and move them through the city. There's all kinds of ways I can go with that. But basically, just to sort of simplify here, in the book I kind of break these down. There's, a chapter on each, so there's a lot more to it. But basically you've got these competing ideological perspectives that I think are more interesting than the individual politicians who, come and go. But over the long term, I think it's important to look at these different political ideologies and viewpoints about how urban space should be shaped and who should be making those decisions through this lens of these, for lack of a better way of putting it, ideologies of mobility. Mm-hmm. So that might be a handful there for you. But
no, well, it's good. It's a good handful. I'm thinking that, one of the thoughts I'm having is when you talk about neoliberalism, well, for one thing, that sounds like what I think of as being conservative, let the market decide. But isn't that kind of the way the conservatives think about it?
It is very interesting, but ask yourself this. Every time, let's invoke Shoup here. Every time you start talking about pricing the car through market-based mechanisms like high occupant toll lanes or parking pricing or vehicle miles fee or some sort of pricing mechanism, the fascinating thing to me in the politics is this just vitriolic opposition. And it comes often from conservative voices. There's a progressive side, too, which is concerned about the social justice implications. But think Tea Party. Their politics is that the government should ensure cheap, unfettered car use. And so it's an active government. It's not a market. It's not, the car system is far from market-based. It's deeply subsidized through both financial and regulatory approaches. And so it's interesting. I think another way to think about the politics here is I'm from the South originally, mm-hmm. and you might think that neoliberal is conservative, but conservatives in the South believe in a very active government in shaping what you learn in school, for example, prayer in school, sex education. So they're on many issues. Conservatives actually do believe in an activist government. Now they're not necessarily supporting taxes increases that underwrite mass transportation or anything like that, but they certainly also protest gas gas taxes, and things like that you would use to fund transportation infrastructure. So I see this nuance between neoliberals and conservatives that I think is important to bring out into the open, because I see it as an opportunity to distinguish the two positions, and thus it clarifies things, and I think it gives progressives who are concerned about sustainable transportation and trying to understand these political barriers. I think it's a very constructive, useful lens for progressives so that they better understand what they're up against. That it's not just one monolithic thing, but actually the neoliberal and conservative don't always see eye to eye, and they especially don't see eye to eye on transportation policy.
Right. So then sometimes the free market is actually, I mean, really the only reason conservatives don't like free market is because it pays for helping poor people and with education or with jobs and things like that. That's the only time they don't like the free market, but they like it. I mean, that's the only time they like. Hmm?
It was kind of broken up. I didn't quite hear. Sorry. Okay.
People like the free market when it's going to work in their favor.
Well, I mean, I think it's a little more complicated than that. But the idea that I think a conservative viewpoint about poverty, for example, is that there's some moral failure of the individual, and like they didn't work hard enough, or they were lazy, or that there's something that they failed to do to be successful. And we know that's not true, that there are a lot of structural issues within society that create these conditions, and that's what progressives are keenly aware of. But that's where you do, I think it's convenient for the neoliberal perspective to invoke that conservative. I mean, there's been a marriage in this country since at least Reagan, if not before, between this neoliberal and conservative ideology. And it's been very strong and very hard to maneuver around. But I still think it's important, especially when we're talking about debates about our streets and in our cities, that there is a distinction, there is a nuance, and that's an opportunity to promote bicycling, to promote reallocating our streets to a more sustainable and progressive mode of transportation.
But in San Francisco, it's very different than in LA. Do we have the same
I don't think
arguments?
So.
Really?
I don't think it's that different. I think it's of LA that have the same kind of progressive politics as San Francisco. But you got to remember that we're in a Bay Area, and when you think of us as the Bay Area, we're not that different.
Oh.
San Jose, have you spent time in San Jose?
Not really.
Or Silicon Valley, which is a very high growth part of the Bay Area. It's similar to parts of Greater Los Angeles. I think that's one of the things that I've noticed in this almost 20 years that I've been looking at transportation politics, is that every city I go to, every city I spend time in, every city I study, you see the same progressive, neoliberal, conservative politics. There is a difference in the pronunciation. Yes, San Francisco has a longer history of a more cohesive, progressive transportation policy, but it's not the dominant. We've got a lot of dysfunctional transportation problems, and we're hamstrung by extreme regional fragmentation. We've got I think 19 transit agencies. We can't even ride our bike to the East Bay over the bridge because of Caltrans, which is the same agency that you have down in LA. I think that if you look at Long Beach, they're doing some pretty progressive things with bicycling, and even they're starting to do some things in Echo Park and downtown LA, Silver Lake, those areas. And yes, they're very car oriented, but all things considered, I think the politics is similar to the progressive politics in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
It's made of percentages. Sorry?
I was thinking that, in terms of public planning and where you're going to put your money for cars or for bikes, that just the conditions of San Francisco make bikes much more obvious place to put your money, just because of how crowded it is.
Yeah, but you see, that crowding is also a barrier, because what we have in San Francisco is this crazy juxtaposition where on the one hand, now right now I'm only talking about the city of San Francisco, which is 7 miles by 7 miles with 830,000 people. So it's a very high density. But the density of the outer neighborhoods of San Francisco, the Excelsior, Sunset, there's densities like that in Los Angeles, East LA, Hollywood, West Hollywood, East Hollywood areas. The Wilshire corridor is actually extremely dense relative to a typical American city. But the juxtaposition here in San Francisco is that we have, on the one hand, we have a per capita car ownership rate of about 0.5, or another way to say it is 500 per 1,000 persons. 500, I think it's 550 vehicles per 1,000 persons. That is Western European car ownership rates. In the rest of the U.S., it's like 800, 700 or 800 per 1,000 people. But in San Francisco, we have 550 to about every 1,000 people. We also, if you look at it from a household car ownership perspective, about 30% of households in the city of San Francisco are car-free. Some of them, it's an income. But we probably have one of the highest rates of, discretionary car-free households. People who are choosing to live without a car but could otherwise afford a car. And those are some important metrics. 30% car-free households and about 550 per 1,000 per capita car ownership. But then we've got this juxtaposition. Even with those numbers, we have somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 cars per square mile, which is an incredibly high density of motorized vehicles in such a small amount of space. We are built out. There is nowhere to go. When you add a bus lane or a bike lane, you are taking away car space. Period. Mm-hmm. There is no other alternative. And so that actually makes the stakes much harder here. Block by block is a guerrilla war. And the incumbent motorists believe that they are entitled to every square inch of the street, and many of them are hostile, and so they fight. And we have pitched battles throughout the city over scarce space. And the thing that a lot of the car drivers don't get is that we're in a stalemate. And by doing nothing, let's say we just allow the cars to have the street space that they have now. By doing nothing, it is getting worse for everyone, including the car drivers. But if we take away car space and replace it with bus lanes and bike lanes, we make things better for bus passengers, which are a substantial portion of our city, and bicyclists, which is a very rapidly growing segment of our city. So we only have one real choice, and that is to take away car space. But it's not that easy. Now, you go to San Diego, or you go to Austin, Texas, or you go to, even to the suburbs of the Bay Area, and what they can do that you can't do in San Francisco is just throw in a bike lane on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Or their roads have such a big right-of-way already that they got room to put in a cycle track or something. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It's still difficult in the suburbs, too. But I hope you understand what I'm saying here is that despite our high rate of car-free households and low per capita car ownership, those who have cars here are extreme in their protection of the space that they have. And there are still lots of them. So it's a very challenging city, and the politics here over cars and street space is vitriolic.
Who's winning?
Look at Portland, okay? Portland does not have the car density that we have. Portland's car density, I'm going to venture to say, is in the range of 3,000 to 4,000 per square mile. It's like Berkeley. It's like Pasadena. It's all craftsman cottages, single-family homes, some multi-family homes, and then there's this new downtown stuff, and that's all being crafted as it's built. So it's like it wasn't like there was an incumbent there and they went and took away the space, right? They're building these new high-rise developments on the south side of their downtown and on the north side of their downtown, and they're building it with the transit and with the bicycles and pedestrians in mind. Who's winning? Right now, it's a stalemate. Right now, it's a stalemate here. There is a whole nother dimension to this too, which is gentrification. San Francisco is a boom town right now in terms of these social network tech jobs. And there are people coming in from all over the country, and they want to be in San Francisco because they want to ride a bicycle and walk. But they are driving up the rent. And so there is a backlash against livable urbanism that's complicating our debate here. So it's a very messy, multi-layered politics. And this takes me back to this ideological layout that I gave you. The progressive view of livability in terms of the built environment is very similar to where the neoliberals are going as well. The neoliberal view, you look at LA, for example, you've got these big developers that are more than happy to do transit-oriented infill with bike lanes. That's what attracts the new professional workers and the companies that hire them. So what you have here in San Francisco is a conflation of what is ostensibly a progressive built environment as the enemy of the working class, because what's coming with it is displacement, gentrification. And there's this fear, which I don't think is unfounded, that the working class are being pushed into the car-oriented, sprawling outer suburbs, where that's the only place they can afford to live. And you have something like that in LA. That's what the Inland Empire is, for the most part.
Is what? It's poor people being
increasingly where lower income, families that are working class, and that's where they can afford a house, is in Hemet, which was ground zero for the mortgage lending crisis. So, as a geographer, that's where I get into all these interesting questions like, peak oil and climate change and sprawl and automobility and, all of these things that are all converging together, or they're in cross currents, and wrapping your mind around all of this and trying to make sense of it and trying to like work out policies that work is challenging. And then you've got political fragmentation of our metropolitan areas, and then you've got a federal government that has been basically absent from creating a sustainable urban policy for this country. So all the cities are left to kind of fend for themselves. So everybody likes to look, I digress a little bit, but everybody likes to look at Portland, and I think Portland's great. I spent a lot of time there. But it's single family homes, it's lower density, and it's lower car density, so the stakes are not as high. When you put in a traffic calming or a bicycle boulevard or some new bikeway in Portland, you're not affecting as many car drivers per unit of the facility, per length of the facility, as you are in San Francisco. We basically created livability in this city and overlaid it with a car-oriented system. So it's really a good warning. It's a good bellwether or warning for what happens if around the country we start to create these transit-oriented, walkable, bikeable communities that everybody's saying we need to do, but we cram them full of parking and, still accommodate cars. It's dysfunctional. The dysfunction of this city is I think, an example of what could go wrong. Having said that, the city still has huge potential. So it's an important place to watch. But I think LA is fascinating too.
All right. Well,
and not too far behind. And you got a lot more room. You have this magnificent grid that covers your entire, everything from the Santa Monica Mountains to Long Beach, and from the Pacific Ocean to what is it, Whittier or Corona or whatever. Just a grid, right? So you could just lay out a grid of cycle tracks, and it would probably be a bloody mess to do it, but you would not face the same density of cars that you have in in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Do you keep in touch with, is that what we're doing here? Is that what we're working on? What are we?
I hope so. I know that there's, my sense, and I don't know LA, it's the LA Bicycle Coalition. My sense is it's going to work. Yeah, LA County is that, it's kind of working where it can, where communities within LA are supportive of bicycling. So it seems to be working from the center outward, sort of like the downtown and the areas that are kind of closer to the downtown, and then out towards the beach and to the south. But Long Beach has got its own thing going on. It's a separate thing. It's impressive a little bit, but it's still fragmented, and it's really just along the coast of Long Beach, along the first 10 blocks from the sea, from the I guess that's a bay there, but I think you've got a vibrant new movement, and I think that one thing about LA that has struck me, and this is where maybe talking to Adonia would shed some light, is that it is more multicultural, it seems, in LA. That there's definitely a lot more of a Latino and other minority presence within at least that you see cycling, that you see biking. That's not to say that there isn't that here, but there's something pronounced about it that kind of observed in Los Angeles.
And does that make a difference in the fight?
I think it's important. I mean, you have, what was that mayor's name, Villaraigosa?
Yeah.
He was, I think, wasn't he a proponent of cycling?
Yeah, mostly after he got hit on a bike.
Right. But like these events, like these Ciclavia events, they kind of it was amazing. It was so diverse.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite impressed.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And I don't know. So this fight in your book.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think of it as, I don't know if everybody thinks of it as a fight. Do you ever think of it in terms of an ecosystem?
An ecosystem?
Yeah, like cars and bikes trying to compete for the same resources?
No. I've never thought about it that way.
Oh.
No.
Okay. Well, then ignore that.
You've piqued my interest. If you can point me into something that I could read that would elaborate on that, I'd be curious.
I don't know what feeds one. You only have a certain amount of public money, and you got to give it to one or the other, and they're sort of competing for, just like populations of and an ecosystem. I don't know. We can just
ecosystems don't have politics. They're just like these natural systems that have these cycles. The water cycle, the nutrient cycle, the soil cycle. The animals eat each other. They have parasites and whatever. But our cities are, inherently have embedded in them ideologies and values about how things should be and who should decide, and there's deep contestation over that. So I tend to shy away from more of an ecological explanation and think of it more in terms of just sort of a very material politics. And I'm interested in in how that's playing out.
Just as a last thought about that, though, ecosystems may not have politics, but they do have economics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, look, I'm just getting started in theorizing. You've written a whole book about it. But anything else you'd like to say? I feel like we're sort of in the last lapse here.
Well, I see a lot of potential in Los Angeles, so I'm not as close. Right. I'm not on the ground there. I don't know what your various debates are in terms of street by street, but just from looking at it, it just seems like it's a no-brainer. Well,
like right now, we have something called the Hyperion Project, where they wanted to take this bridge that it connects Atwater and I guess Los Feliz, or the local communities here, and turn it into basically a 55-mile-an-hour highway kind of a thing, because it would get federal money.
Yeah,
if they do it, they're eligible for federal money, and it's been a huge battle with. And then there's another battle on Figueroa where they wanted to make a cycle lane, a cycle track, and then the car company, the car business.
The car dealers. I saw that. I saw an article about that. Yeah.
So we do have the fight, like, just everywhere.
Yeah.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
And it's fight by fight. But, maybe if we were to unify somehow more effectively and get our arguments straight, get the winning arguments together.
Mm-hmm.
We do a little bit about that on Global Bike Talk with Kevin Main from the European Cyclist Federation. Like, he'll say, these are the kinds of things that you need to say. You need to talk this way to these people. And I wonder if all of our bike groups are really synchronized in that way.
Mm-hmm.
to know what the most effective arguments that people are using around the world for bike advocacy are.
Well, I mean, I think to that point, the California Bike Coalition, I think they spend a lot of time kind of thinking about some of these issues, and I missed their most recent summit, which was up here in Oakland, but it was in November, but I believe that was that was one of the themes. And then I think the League of American Cyclists is also trying to grapple with that issue of, how to move beyond just being seen as, spandex or eccentric and, show day, practical, inexpensive, socially just mode of transportation. So I think there's people really addressing that. I mean, not necessarily offering the magic bullet, the silver bullet, but talking about this stuff. And so, I'm optimistic that we're going to see maybe some better articulation of just exactly what the benefits of a bike-oriented city can be.
All right. Well, and so I hope that this is a step in that direction, this conversation we're having. I mean, it is. So what a great stopping point. Thank you, Jason, for this interview.
All right. Well, I hope it helps. And feel free to be in touch. And, if you have the chance, I would encourage you to look up Street Fight.
I will. I absolutely will. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bike Talk. If you want to hear more, go to kpfk.org, navigate to Programs, and choose Bike Talk. On the Bike Talk page, click on the Archives link to play or download shows posted in the last 4 months. Go to BikeTalk.com and copy or click on the RSS feed link to subscribe. Our Twitter handle is BikeTalkBFK. On Facebook, we are Bike Talk. You can become friends and join our group.